Let's start off with, from ICCO, Francis Ingham. Would you mind coming up and sharing your thoughts?
Thank you, David. Well, that's rather neatly set up, actually, by your previous panel. So thank you, Barry. That's very kind of you. We don't really have a big idea as such. We have a big piece of action. Because earlier on today, we launched our PR Professionals Guide to Measurement between AMEC, ICCO, the 28-member National Trade Association body of which I am Executive Director, and the PRCA in the UK, of which I am also the Director General. And we've been working on that guide for over a year with Barry, and we've timed it specifically for today. So what it is a collaborative effort between our three organisations, AMEC, ICCO and the PRCA, that has put together this guide. And I think it is an unprecedented initiative on PR evaluation because each of many trade associations around the world have put together their own individual little guides on evaluation, and we've all banged the drum for why it's important. And by and large, people have ignored us comprehensively. And that's the simple reality of it. And what we've done with this instead is get 28 national associations and AMEC to agree on a common guide to measurement and to agree to start promoting it heavily. And we've drawn together, I think, some top thinking from PR leaders and measurement experts alike. So some of them are here today: Jeremy Thompson, Giselle Bodie, David, yourself, Richard Badnell, and David Gallagher, the president of ICCO. So I think these are serious people from across PR and evaluation who bring a great deal of weight to what we've done, and hopefully will have some rather more significant impact than what's happened previously. As for the actual structure of the guide, it's an online resource. It's 12 chapters, a mixture of case studies, practical guidance, and it's from across the world. So we have contributions from South Africa and Australia, the UK, the US, mainland Europe, the whole breadth of people. And that's, I think, why it has power. It provides everything people need to know, whether they're new to evaluation or whether they're used to it, in one place. It's easy to use, easy to navigate, and it's deliberately practical, not theoretical. It's something that people can read and readily understand and grasp. We also, however, recognise that this is only the first step in the right direction. So this will be updated twice a year between ourselves at ICCO and PRCA and AMEC, and we will bring in contributions from more and more countries every time it is updated. Now, we have circulated this in advance to the 28 national trade associations that compose ICCO, and they each have sold it in their home media, and they each have been releasing it at various points during today. So I know that PR Week in the UK ran with it as their lead story today, PR Week in the US, Gorkana, I know Communicate magazine, I did the interview here this morning about it, PR Moment and others as well. So we think this will be a tangible outcome from today's conference discussions. As for the next steps, we will expect, and we have commitments from those 28 national associations to push it out to all of their members, to the 1,500 agencies who are their members. And you will also receive it as well next week. Barry has, I'm sure, agreed that with me, even if he might not recall it. We will also be inviting other non-ICCO associations to endorse it and to circulate it to their members so that we can create a sense of momentum to have this as a commonly accepted guide and argument and case for evaluation. It won't be the Holy Grail, if indeed there is a Holy Grail. I rather suspect there isn't, but it will at least be a roadmap and an argument for why it's important. So finally, what is our aim? Well, I think it's a rather big aim, but it's an achievable one, to put common principles and guidance at the heart of PR practitioners across the world. And I do believe that is a sufficiently big idea. Thank you.
So my hope here is we're going to have each of the 5 folks present for a couple minutes. That was great. Thanks, Francis. And then get a few questions from the audience. Next up, Catherine Arrow, representing the Global Alliance.
Kia ora, and it's very good to be here with you this afternoon and today, and listening to some of the many ideas, the big ones that have just been revealed, and the other ones that have emerged during the conversations. I'd like to start by just having a quick look at what we know. And what we know is that public relations builds and sustains those relationships that we need in order to maintain our license to operate. And that's absolutely critical. Those relationships require trust, an ability to listen, understanding, good behaviour, and excellent communication in order to flourish. We need to know the standing of those relationships and the value that they bring to our organisation. So a significant part of our work has to involve research, measurement, and evaluation. Historically, emphasis has been placed on the measurement of specific communications channels, which is great, but that only tells us just a little bit, a part of the story. The Global Alliance is a confederation of the world's PR and communications associations, and it represents more than 160,000 practitioners and academics around the world, and it regularly joins forces with many others, AMEC and other academic institutions, to improve professionalism, develop knowledge, foster understanding, and undertake advocacy programs. The GA idea that I've been delegated to present to you today is a simple one. In the words of Elvis, and I know song themes have been popular today, let's have a little less conversation and a little more action. And our idea for action just has 5 simple strands that I'm going to whip through for you now. The first concerns evaluation. We must develop our capacity not simply to measure, but to evaluate. Evaluation provides us with the context we need in order to interpret the big data we gather. It allows us to glean intelligence, gain insights, assess risk, and develop the critical relationships that we require for effective operation. Research fills our petrol tank. Measurements act as a signpost, but evaluation tells us not only that we've reached our destination, but whether or not that destination is the right one for us. The GA's intention is to encourage practitioners to evaluate, not just accumulate measurement data. We'll do this in a few ways. We're going to create a portal within our existing knowledge bank that acts as a curation point for member information, policies, the many approaches that exist at the moment to this particular field, some case studies, online courses that exist, and other materials that may be helpful. Secondly, world approaches, because there are different paradigms that exist, will be included in the first ongoing study of public relations, which the GA will be conducting at a global level later this year in partnership with the University of Southern California, so that progress in the field can be tracked over time. This will help identify some of the barriers and create an understanding of the various cultural norms that exist, that are determined by public relations models that are outside the Western PR traditions that perhaps we're used to and that we've been discussing today. Third up is the Melbourne Mandate, which José Manuel mentioned this morning. And this is a collaborative approach to current and future public relations practice developed by practitioners and academics worldwide and adopted by the World Public Relations Forum last year. It says public relations and communication professionals have a mandate to define and maintain an organization's character and values, build a culture of listening and engagement, and instill responsible behaviors by individuals and organizations. Obviously, you can achieve none of these things without effective RME. As part of the ongoing development of the mandate, the GA has a toolkit soon to be available, which includes the Integrity Index, a professional development framework, and we were talking a moment ago with the panel about the need for education, and a step-by-step guide to implementation. The final strand concerns the GA's involvement with the International Integrated Reporting Council, the IIRC, which is a global coalition of regulators, investors, companies, standard setting, the accounting profession, and NGOs. It shares the view that communication about business value creation should be the next step in the evolution of corporate reporting. This new framework has been piloted worldwide and is available as a consultation draft until July. And I would urge everybody to download this, have a look at it, and have your say, because it's certainly going to shape the future of the way that organizations globally account for what they do. Integrated reporting insists that financial reporting is not enough. And one of the 6 guiding principles runs as follows, and I'll just read it to you. Stakeholder responsiveness. An integrated report should provide insight into the quality of the organization's relationships with its key stakeholders and how and to what extent the organization understands, takes into account, and responds to their legitimate needs, interests, and expectations. Capital is defined not just in financial terms, but as relationship, social, human, and natural capital. So, as I'm sure you'll agree, integrated reporting is a game changer, which puts communication and relationship building smack in the middle of the board table, whether you want to be there or whether, as some have said, they don't. Previously unreported intangible assets, including essential relationship progress, sustainability, and an organization's ability to communicate effectively, are absolutely part of this package. So the GA is going to continue its work with the IIRC, taking the necessary actions to improve the competencies and understandings of practitioners both inside and outside our community. In the long term, as we fill our petrol tanks with research and data, we must have the tenacity to stay on track. Within our final strand is the hope that in time we can develop an advocacy program which sees all 160,000 GA members reaching out to 10 of their contemporaries and their nearest and dearest colleagues to build the vital understanding that without effective RME, we just can't do our job.
Hey, Catherine, do I have this right? You actually traveled all the way here from New Zealand for this, and you've offered to host the next Amex Summit in New Zealand, I believe? I think a lot of people would like to go to New Zealand. I think it's a good place. We've become so international now with 35 countries in this room. Why not New Zealand, after all? All right. Okay, next up is my good friend Bill Murray, former television and movie star, now transformed into the PRSA president. That's right.
Well, as you know, David, the camera adds about 50 pounds. I may look a little different than in my movies, but it's really me. How many of you are aware of PRSA, know something about PRSA? We're a U.S. membership organization. We have about 32,000 individual practitioners who are members of the organization. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach. I'm going to talk about not only what we're doing, but in particular, why we're doing it. We have a very broad mandate as an organization. We talk about many different types of things to our members. For example, we talk about ethics very often. But what we've learned is that when we speak to our members about things like ethics, if we talk to them in the context of ethics are important, ethics are something you should be doing, we get no traction at all. It's like talking to somebody about eating their vegetables or exercising or doing other things that they should be doing. When we talk about ethics in the context of ethics are good business, ethics will protect you. Ethics is something that's practical, that will help you on a day-to-day basis, then people pay attention. So measurement is a little bit the same way in the context of our relationship with our members. We can talk to them about membership, about measurement in a more abstract sort of way, and we tend not to get the traction that we want. But when we ask our members what they want from a membership organization, they want advocacy for the profession. They want to feel good about being a PR practitioner, and they want their organization to speak up for them. So as we looked into this issue, one of the thematic elements that we now talk to them about is being able to demonstrate the value of what they do. In other words, if you want a place in the C-suite, if you want to be noticed as a practitioner, if you want to be taken seriously, if you don't want to be dismissed as a spin doctor, you need to be able to demonstrate that value. So that's how we come to what we do. Now, there's a number of different ways to look at our organization. One way to look at it is with respect to these topics and the things that our members care about. But another way that I look at the organization is in terms of a distribution platform. I'm actually not Bill Murray the actor, but I used to be Bill Murray the lobbyist, and I used to work for Hollywood studios. Hollywood studios are not fonts of creativity. They basically make big movies that blow up and have people that run around in them naked and say bad words. But what they do have is a distribution platform that's incredible. They get their movies out very easily all over the world. PRSA is a little bit like that. We look for content from excellent sources from any place we can find it. AMEC, for example, an excellent source of rich content about membership. Then we look at our distribution platform. We can reach out to 32,000 members, another 100,000 prospects with the push of a button. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today in terms of what we're doing. What we're doing is a couple things, but we're basically integrating measurement into every aspect of what we do. We want to prioritize for our members measurement. I think Rob mentioned earlier awards programs. We got about 850 entries in our awards program last year. At least half of them didn't adequately address measurement. We just took those and put them aside. So we go back over and over again to the applicants and we say to them, look, you need to focus on measurement. It's repetitive, it's redundant, but we need to drive the message in over and over and over again. We look for key partnerships. We look for partnerships like AMEC, as well as other organizations, the Global Alliance, for example, to basically do things where we're stronger together than we are individually. So this year in Philadelphia, we'll be doing our second measurement seminar. We did this last year very successfully, again, bringing content into an environment, a distribution environment, and getting that out to everybody. Third thing is persistence. We just keep hammering away at our members over and over and over again through our publications, through our webinars. About a year ago, we were working on an issue related to a dues increase that we were working on. We had this weird quirk in our bylaws. Our members have to actually vote to increase their dues. This is a bit like getting people to vote to pay more taxes. I mean, it's almost an impossible kind of endeavor. And this dates from about 50 years ago, something antiquated. So we set about a communication campaign. We told people in January they were going to vote in October. We told them in February, in March. We told them again in September. And I got an email back from two people on the same day. One person said to me, enough already. If you tell me one more time you're going to increase the dues, I'm going to go nuts. I get it. You need to increase your dues. You've told me all the messaging. You got my vote. And then I got a separate email that day from a woman who wrote to me and she said to me, oh my gosh, you're going to increase the dues. Why didn't you tell us about this? I can't believe this. How could you do this and not let us know? So I think part of what we all have to do collectively, but PRSA in particular, because of the position that we're in, the distribution position of strength, is to tell this message over and over and over and over again until it sinks in. So that's our big idea. Be persistent, motivate people, and keep pushing. Thanks.
All right, next up is Jane Wilson with CIPR. Thanks, Jane.
Good afternoon, everyone. We were asked, as Francis said, to come up with a big idea. And like all of you in this room, we have about 100 of those before breakfast every day. So we tried to think of some things that would be practical and would move this forward and would make measurement not a nice to have or an option, but something that is really part of the fabric of our members and other PR practitioners' lives. So why do people join the CIPR? Why do we exist? The second Tony Blair mention of the day, education, education, education. Measurement and evaluation have been an integral part of all of our qualifications of our training program for some time now. In 2010, we published the Measurement and Evaluation Toolkit for PR practitioners. We rolled it out to our members and we updated that again in 2011 after the Barcelona Principles. But we went out to our members and said, what do you think of this toolkit? What do you think of the Barcelona Principles? Because we have a responsibility to educate. And we realized that we weren't moving this on. We did practical things like we banned AVEs from our awards at the end of 2010. So from 2011 they weren't accepted in our awards. But we weren't moving it on. We weren't replacing it with something better. So again, we went back to education, and we talked to our members and said, why aren't you changing? What are the barriers? And they told us two things were causing the problems. There was the application. They understood the principles. They understood the valid metrics and the use of standards, but there was something stopping them from actually going and applying them. And when we drilled down more deeply, they said to us, those who knew the principles existed, because when we looked, there were three types of people. Those who didn't know they exist at all and had no knowledge and weren't particularly bothered. Those who knew they existed but weren't using them, and those who knew they existed and had integrated them into their day-to-day jobs. And granted, those are the smallest parts. So we have concentrated on the middle group and questioned them further. And they've said the things that stop them using them are changing from theory, which they buy into practice. And it's really interesting to hear, Francis, what you're doing with the guidebook. I think that will be hugely useful in helping to change that internationally. Because people were reading our theory, reading the practice and saying, but what about people like me? How do I use this? How do I use this when I have no budget? Give me examples of how other people have used this. And the other thing they said is, people aren't buying it. We go out to our clients, I go to my boss, I go to the CFO or the CEO, they're not buying this new thing that I'm selling. So we said, well, what practical things can we do to move this on? So the practical things we're doing, very much like you've done already, Francis, we've already got the toolkit, and now we're collating a handbook just of case studies. So right up front, we'll be saying, and we'll be inviting all of you to contribute if you'd like. It's not just for CIPR members. Right up front, we'll be saying, these are the principles. This is the AMEC guidance. This is the CIPR measurement evaluation toolkit. And now this is the ICCO guidebook. What are you doing that applies that in real life? Give us some great examples, from huge expensive campaigns to very, very cheap campaigns, people who are using Google Analytics and other online tools to great effect. And we will just pull those together in a case study ebook that will be available online and available to our members. And it will just be a constantly evolving handbook that is just filled with case studies, and case studies that can be easily accessed. Because we already have the toolkit. We now have to turn that into practical examples, and lots of them, and have a repository for those. And we'd be delighted to contribute in future to your future editions of your handbook. And the second thing is answering that question about people just aren't buying this new thing we're selling. So what we're doing is we're taking a roadshow out. We've started talking to the Institute of Directors in the UK, the Chartered Institute of Managers, the Chartered Institute of Accountants of England and Wales, the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and going to the people who buy PR and doing two things. Telling them what good public relations measurement and evaluation looks like, telling them what they should expect from good public relations practitioners who care about measurement and evaluation, and listening. So that's that sort of the mind the gap part of the equation. It's saying to them, well, what do you want out of your PR people? So it's starting a conversation with them that better understands what they want, and telling them about what the kind of things that are possible now and what good public relations practice is. So two things. One is preaching to the choir, preaching to those who are inside our profession. And the other one, which I think is more important, because we could all sit in rooms like this and talk like this forever and a day, and it won't change external practice, and that is going out to the business world and talking to the people who procure our services. And those are big ideas education. Those are two practical tactics to fulfill it. Thank you.
You know, as I invite the next speaker up, José, María, Palomares, I'm going to deviate a little and tell you a personal story, because I've just had an epiphany off your last name of how I ever got into communications. How many here have ever heard of the Palomares incident in Spain? You? Hopefully? Okay.
Well, it's a nice crisis management story.
Yes.
Many years ago.
My father was with the embassy here in Madrid, and we lived here when I was a kid, and this was the mid-'60s, and this was during the time of what was called the fail-safe program. And if the fail-safe program, if you've ever even seen the movie, is the United States would keep a nuclear bomber in the plane, in the air at all times, flying towards Moscow. And it would get refueled over Spain. A fueler plane would leave Torrejon Air Force Base and go up and fuel it. And in the it was 1966, I believe, when they went up and connected everything, the nuclear bombs fell out of the plane. And two of them landed, if I recall correctly, near the town of Palomares, and one of them landed in the ocean. And in fact, very fortuitously, a local fisherman had seen where it landed, and after being ignored for quite some time by all the experts, actually they listened to him, they went out and found the remaining nuclear bomb, none of which went off. But my dad was actually in charge of handling the communications for that particular crisis while at the U.S. Embassy. So I've always wondered how I ever got in this field, and now I realize it, thanks to your last name. Thanks very much, this is great.
Well, the first thing I can say is that I'm very proud of my surname, but I have to confess that I've never been to Palomares, which is a very small village in the south of Spain, in the Mediterranean Sea. Anyway, although we have had all these kind of crises, that still today we are dealing with the American embassy, we are still dealing with that, but I recommend you to visit all this area. Well, the first thing I have to say is that I'm not going to be very original, I'm afraid, because I'm going to talk about global standards. And I'm afraid this is not the first time you are going to hear this, thing today. And the second thing I have to say is that I'm going to be very brief, because we are not going, well, I'm talking on behalf of Dircom, the Spain Communication Director Association, the main association here in Spain. I'm not going to talk about what we are doing around the global standards on measurement. I'm going to make some kind of proposition, and I want to involve AMEC in this proposition, and of course the rest of my colleagues in this roundtable. Dircom suggests an industry-wide paper led by AMEC, and that is because we think that the global adoption of a standard criteria is a very important issue in order to evaluate intangible assets and measure communication. This is because we think that we have to overcome the current situation where an array of measuring systems and metrics are in place. And during these 2 days of this workshop, we have seen a lot of examples of what I'm trying to share with you. To achieve this end, we suggest, doesn't work? Yes, right now, again. Okay, so as I was sharing with you, to achieve this end, we suggest that MEC could coordinate the production of a white paper reflecting the existing views and procedures, and of course, best cases and case studies, as some of my colleagues mentioned before. And of course, setting globally accepted standards arising from the consensus of the communication in the communication industry. Dircom, the Spain's Communications Director Association, offers, of course, its local cooperations and suggests that AMEC should involve all main national and international industry bodies in order to achieve a respected and effective set of standards for communications measurements. So, to sum up, what we are looking for is for an inclusive white paper to set global standards and to include best cases worldwide. Thank you very much.
Okay, before we move on to our interactive part of this afternoon and then close, any questions here? Can we take a couple questions for the industry leader panel? Anybody have any questions they'd like to ask?
My question is for the folks who are recommending standards. And I am a very big supporter of standards, but my question would be, are the standards just of the metrics that exist today, or are they standards of taking the metrics to the next level based on some of the feedback that you've heard today?
Well, I think the more pressing problem really is to get people to commit to using evaluation at all. Lots of our members in the UK have clients who simply don't want it because they don't believe it's necessary. And the same is reflected in the membership of the 28 members of ICCO. So I think there's a great deal of good stuff out there already. You ought to convince clients that they ought to use at least one of those good mechanisms rather than inventing new ones?
I think it is an evolving process. I think Francis is right. Adopting evaluation as an important part of the thing that we do is the first step. But if it evolves and if we keep step of business, and actually be very clear about what we mean by evaluation, because at some points today and in meetings like this, I hear people talk about media evaluation. That's a different thing from research, planning, and evaluation against business objectives. So actually even making sure we all understand what we mean by evaluation, and those are two different things. Some people just look at media evaluation as a separate thing. The CARE example we saw earlier. So I think we need to look at generally accepting that evaluation is important, that it starts at the planning stage, and that it is an evolving thing, but that it isn't just about evaluating media, it's about linking to business objectives. Does that answer?
If I could just do a follow-up to that. I certainly support getting on with it, but I think that some folks, and maybe the UK is different, but I think some folks who are maybe resisting don't understand the value, or may feel that it's not answering the mail on the conversation they need to have with their executives. So I would just challenge you and this group to say, gee, do we have the right metrics? Yes, let's get on it, let's have standards, let's move forward. But I think just a little time out and regroup and say, is this the right stuff that's really going to be answering the mail on what people like me need and what we're willing to pay for?
And that's why we're going out to the other institutes with the other management functions, because we have to make sure that it's what they want too, and that they understand that there is something extra that they can get from people who work in public relations and communications.
One more question. Chris.
Yeah, this is Chris Foster with Booz Allen Hamilton. So I guess I sort of would echo Jody's point and almost put a finer point in it. I guess I go back to Rob's point. I think there's a sense of urgency that I feel for the PR industry. And I know that there's I think the conversation has been very interesting around the set of standards and measures. And I'm concerned when I hear that we have comments like, we have everything we need now, we just need people to pay attention to it and use them differently. I don't share that feeling. I think there's a good basis probably to start, but I do think we need to lean into tomorrow and reimagine what tomorrow is for this industry, not sitting from where we sit here, but sitting from where our clients sit. And the reason I say that so definitively is that the business is changing, and there's an entire new market, that a new crop of companies and organizations that see the potential in measurement, evaluation, and communications and marketing. And that is the IBMs and McKinseys and Booz Allens of the world, who have a lot of money to invest, who are running at this incredibly deliberately. 3 of the top 5 consulting firms in the world now are all investing in building communications analytics shops, hiring PR professionals, and running at corporate clients. And we're looking at the problems very differently than I've heard today. So while I really appreciate what the conversations that's been had, is I do worry, as a former PR agency guy, I worry about the fact that I don't know that we see it as clearly as I would hope we would.
Cool. Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Catherine.
I would agree with you entirely, and I think one of the areas, particularly with the integrated reporting situation, is that the asset sheet is changing completely. So the financial assets that would have maybe dominated the line, and you might have had 75% tangible assets and the remainder in intangible assets, that position is reversed now. And you've got different types of previously intangible assets that are now eminently measurable. They have always been measurable, I'm afraid that's my personal opinion. But I think that you're going to find that unless we get our act together and we start to do it now and we start to do it properly, we start to speak the same language in terms of the way that we refer to the things that we're measuring at those different levels. So the measurement tells you how long the piece of string is, the evaluation tells you, did it work with my shoes? And then, no, it didn't, buy your shoelaces. The whole of the integrated reporting scenario is such that what will happen is that the accountants and the management consultants and everybody else will just step into that role, and as a profession will be relegated to a technician role as opposed to a strategic role. And as I think it was John was saying previously, that sort of conciliary approach won't happen, okay? Because the people who are the organizational and business advisors will be the ones that understand the value that the work that we do brings to the whole of the business, not just a part of it, but the whole of the business. And an organization in today's world isn't just made up of a balance sheet. You know, it's the people that form the backbone of the organization that connect with the people on the outside. And all of those different natural capitals, they're the things that we have to understand, document, interpret, evaluate, and lead us forward to the next point. Because it's not just about, yeah, we did it, it worked, it was a great job. It's about how can that inform us to make great decisions that will grow our organizations in the future. So, yeah, absolutely right. We've got to do something now.
Last comment from Jane.
Very quickly. And just on those integrated reporting standards, I think that is the game changer. And I would urge everyone in the room to go on to the website. There's a consultation process happening at the moment, so you can get in and get involved and have your say, and you'll be able to see what the other big firms are saying. And this is being led by the financial community and not the communications community. And I agree, I think it's a massive opportunity for us, but it's also a huge risk.
Great. Okay, hand for the industry panel. Thank you.